this quote just really is really important to me because, like I said, there are still stories within my own family that I don't know, that I don't know if I'll ever know. But I do feel like it is really important for all of us to be able to share and to be able to educate. And so
Thank you. Good evening. Holocaust Museum Houston is honored to host two Latin American organizations, the Auschwitz Institute and the Central American Collective, during this hour of the vigil, working to educate and provide a platform for Latinx narratives through Holocaust and human rights education. In this session, you will learn about each organization, make connections to the past and present history, and how you can take action to prevent genocide and mass atrocities.
Joining us for our conversation this evening is Dr. Clara Ramirez Berat, who is the director of the Warren Educational Policies Program at the Auschwitz Institute for the Prevention of Genocide. Before joining the Auschwitz Institute, she was a senior research associate at the International Center for Transitional Justice, an organization she worked with for more than 4 years after having served for 2 years as a Fulbright postdoctoral fellow. More recently, she worked on the intersection between transitional justice and education, both by developing a child-friendly version of the Kenyan Truth Commission's final report and as a part of a broader 2-year research project on transitional justice, education, and peace building. Thank you for being with us tonight, Dr. Ramirez Barat.
Thank you, Laurie. It's my pleasure to be here. I actually want to very specially thank the people of the Houston Museum, the Holocaust Museum Houston, Michelle and Wendy as well as the Together We Remember Coalition for organizing this 24-hour virtual global vigil, and especially for creating a space for community and hope as we close Genocide Awareness Month. And we know that after this difficult year we've all experienced, it's a moment in which we actually all need a lot of hope and keep going as new challenges arise, and we are seeing them all over the world. So today I'm here in partnership with the Holocaust Museum Houston to talk a little bit about the Warren Educational Policies Program of the Auschwitz Institute, and very specifically much more specifically, the work that we do in Latin America. So I'm going to share my screen with you all because I have a presentation, just some slides that will guide me through and make sure that I also don't limit my time, don't go over my time. So very quickly, the Auschwitz Institute, for those of you who doesn't know it, it's an international organization that works in the field of genocide and mass atrocity prevention. The Institute was established in 2006 and has offices all over the world, well, in different countries in the world. The organization mainly works with governments, offering training, technical assistance, and research on the field of mass atrocity prevention. To the date, AIPJ has 19 UN member states participating in its programs and a community over 6,000 alumni in its network of officials, practitioners, and scholars working on atrocity prevention all over the world. I wanted to start this conversation regarding the work that we do, and specifically the work that we are doing in Latin America in the area of education, stating something that is what keeps us going. And I think many of the people that are here today, if not everybody, and I was just linking from the panel before this one in this vigil, is that we believe that genocide and mass atrocity can be prevented. These are not irrational happenings that doesn't have an explanation, or that there's nothing that can be done to prevent these kind of crimes from happening over and over again, even though we keep saying never again. From the perspective of many organizations and the Auschwitz Institute, but not only, when we think about prevention, we think in three different manners in which we can build this work and try to construct societies that are more resilient to the risks of mass atrocity. We normally talk about three strategies that we differentiate on when we think about how to do preventive work. First, we talk about primary or upstream prevention, which is the before these events happen. So it's analysis of risk factors and warning signs. And most specifically, it's promoting and protecting human rights, rule of law, and pluralistic forms of living together. We also talk about secondary midstream prevention, which is actually immediate real-time response. So that's during crises, how we stop violence from happening, how do protect civilians, how do provide help to the societies, the communities that need this support. And then we talk about tertiary or downstream prevention, which is after. So how do we recover and rebuild post-atrocity societies? And I wanted to make this stance here just to make clear that for the Auschwitz Institute, while all these strategies are very important and we recognize them, we basically focus our work in the primary and the tertiary strategies, precisely because when we talk about secondary and midstream prevention, it's when we have less options, and also when the consequences of not having been able to prevent atrocity from happening, it's more, it has more costs in terms, specifically of human lives. And this is where I think comes the work of the War and Educational Policies program, and also something that explains why an organization such as the Auschwitz Institute does have a department, which is the department that I lead, that only focuses on education work. Named to honor the legacy and celebrate the inspiring life of Holocaust survivor and also Houston community member Naomi Kaplan Warren, the aim of the Educational Policies program of the Auschwitz Institute is to develop knowledge, capacity, and experience to effectively integrate educational policies and programming that has been developed for children and young people into broader governmental strategies for the prevention of mass atrocities and genocide. And again, I think this is important to say in terms of, they were telling me to put the presentation mode. Zoom sometimes confuses me. There is so much you have to be focusing on. So basically this idea that we understand that the educational work is also part of broader policies. So the War and Educational Policies program of the Auschwitz Institute specifically started working in Latin America. And this was in 2015, responding to a specific demand from our partners in different governments in the region that work together in what it's called the Latin American Network for Genocide and Mass Atrocity Preventions, which when we were talking with them about what kind of initiatives we could build together, they were specifically telling us that they wanted to include some educational programming in the kind of activities they could think of when thinking about building what I was talking about when I was saying upstream prevention strategies. It's with this idea in mind that AIPJ created the Education for Prevention of Mass Atrocities project, which was a methodology that we developed to build 2 projects within 2 countries of the region that would have as a direct effect the creation of 2 programs, 2 educative programs to work with children and teachers into different countries, but at the same time would be also in the midterm something that would serve us to develop a methodology and to kind of create a more ambitious program looking into this intersection between prevention and education. And I think that what it's important for us here is also to understand why we started in Latin America. As I said before, the Auschwitz Institute has offices in different places of the world and works from a regional perspective, also a global perspective. But for this very program, we decided to start working in Latin America. And it was not only because our partners were asking us to think together about how to develop programming in this area, but it was also because we started with something that at the time I thought was very provocative or very innovative. And it's the idea that we didn't want to come with a project that was closed. We wanted to build consultation processes to bottom up, build to projects that from an educational perspective would aim to prevent mass atrocities and human rights violations in the countries in which we were putting into place these projects. And this idea was based in a very deep reflective process and a learning process that had four assumptions regarding the importance of how we do our work in different contexts and what does give legitimacy, quality, sustainability to the work that we do. Recognizing that there's also a variety and a richness of experiences and that there's no one size fits all approach. We have amazing programs in peace education, human rights and citizenship education, Holocaust education, history, collective memory, and moral education. And we didn't want to say, we wanted to be able to understand this complexity and all these tools in these different contexts in order to build programs that were crafted to meet the needs of those contexts. And for us, it was also very important to start working in Latin America because as Michelle, and I'm sure Maria will later tell and discuss, it's a country that it's full of experience in terms of dealing with very difficult pasts, with a lot of capacity and knowledge. And for us, it was because what I was telling about this possibility of developing something that would have a longer impact was also a place in which we thought would have a tremendous learning gain. And I have to say, we were completely right on that assumption. So very quickly, I'm just going to tell you, this process started several years ago. We started up working with two countries, El Salvador and Brazil, where we developed two different projects in collaboration with our governmental partners and counterparts or state level officials. And these are two projects that are still underway now. They are both are still going on. And I just wanted to briefly tell you what happened with this crazy, I'm just saying crazy, but it was not crazy, this idea that we had to put people from different groups, from different contexts and backgrounds discussing what would be a good educational project in this specific contexts. In El Salvador, we launched a partnership with the Ombudsman Office in July of 2016, to which later the Ministry of Education also joined. We created a working group with representatives from civil society, teachers, students, and also public officials. And we developed a consultation to kind of try to see what were the needs, what was the context, what was already there, what was the curricula, how we could fit in and create a project that would have some impact. In a clear manner, it came very straightforward that there was a need to work on two different issues. There was a need to work in citizenship education from a historical memory perspective. I don't know whether Maria is going to talk about this, but for almost 25 years, El Salvador has not included in their education the history of the 12-year civil war that happened in the country, not the legacy of that war. But there was also a very recurrent issue in terms of violence, especially young groups and gangs violence, and how that had a spillover effect over the schools. So there was this idea that there was a double need to work into this citizenship dimension from a democratic perspective, looking into the past, but at the same time, there was also the need to provide tools for the promotion of peace education in the school system. So we came up with the idea of developing a toolbox. You can see in our website, that's the final document that has 3 books. And it's the very first material that was produced in the country that actually includes the history of the Civil War. We also wanted to build a teacher training component, and we created a permanent training model. This is in the ministry's educational system for teachers. And then with the aim of ensuring the longer term sustainability of the project, we also wanted to promote a public and open debate about the need to include these issues of historical memory and citizenship in the national curricula. And actually that happened in the moment that there was a revision of the curricula underway. So there was some important possibilities to include this material as part of what was already being developed. We still keep working with our partners from the Ombudsman Office and the Ministry of Education. And of course, the COVID pandemic has imposed a very strong limit for all of us working in the field with educators. But this project continues to grow. And our idea now is to probably develop a new booklet to the toolbox dealing with post-COVID citizenship education and keep training more teachers. In Brazil, it's a completely different story. Brazil, I mean, Salvador has 6 million people. Brazil, it's super big country, continental dimensions with a very diverse multicultural society. And we also started a consultation project there. It took a year. We talked to more than 120 people. Again, all these representatives from different sectors of society. And it was interesting because there we were seeing that despite the structural inequalities, there was this need there was this diagnosis that was being done about how society was being polarized, the increase of hate speech, all these things that have been part of this vigil in terms of the increases in prejudice, intolerance, and discrimination. And something that actually is very telling if we see the situation in which the Brazilian society is finding itself today. This is a consultation we also did in 2016, so some years before where we are. So we created this project, which is called Citizenship and Democracy Project, which is a methodology to work with young people from 13 to 18 years old, precisely to build spaces for the recognition of the other, for engaging in positive dialogues, and for learning about how to be a democratic citizen respecting human rights for everybody. So far, we've trained more than 300 teachers, and they've worked with more than 3,500 students. And we started working with 2 states in the federal country, and now we have partners, we have 8 partners, and we are also in very advanced conversations with 4 other states. So this is a work that keeps growing. We're also now dealing with this issue of COVID and how we're going to include this dimension of what has happened regarding the pandemic in a country in which today we are marking 400,000 dead people because of COVID. Last but not least, and also very timing in these moments in which we are doing everything virtually, we just created an online education platform in which we are training teachers in Brazil, but also in El Salvador, and which we also hope will serve other projects as the educational policies program. The War and Educational Policies program of the Auschwitz Institute keeps working in Latin America, but hopefully also in other places around the world. I think that's it. I did my time. I don't want to take over because there's many other content to discuss today.
Again, thank you so much, Dr. Ramirez Barrat. Given your work with youth, what can young people do in their communities to prevent genocide?
Thank you, Lori, for this question. I first want to say, which is something that is also related to the work of AIPJ, I think that preventing genocide is a complex and multi-layered endeavor. And I really think states and international state-based organizations like the UN, the African Union, or the European Union are the ones most responsible for pushing this agenda forward. And I think they still have a long way to go and many things that can be done. Specifically in the area of education, I could say quite some things. That said, I really still believe that changes happen because of what people do every day. Democracy, a culture of peace, and respect for human rights is something that is constructed every day with the actions of millions of individuals. And these actions are not only about respecting other people or respecting the norms that we give ourselves, but I think they also go beyond that and trying to contribute, being positive members of our communities, ready to make the change and to take opportunities to make a difference. And that's what we try to promote through the educational work that we do. Just raise awareness about this possibility and give options to people to be positive members in their communities. I encourage young people not to give things for granted, to reflect about their own ideas and actions, to be self-critical about all the things we believe and why we believe them, and what is the impact of the things that we held so so true, and how we act upon them. What are the consequences in the life of other peoples? And here I also want to take on the spirit of Naomi Warren, who gives name to my program, or to our program, and the many opportunities that I've had to learn some of the, to listen to some of the testimony that she left. That it's not about so much what you don't do, it's about what you do and how you contribute every day to make the world a better place for everybody. That's what I would say.
Wonderful. We'd like to extend our thanks to Dr. Ramirez Barrat for this inspiring conversation, and are honored to continue this discussion with our next guest.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Maria Vilma Duran, who is the founder of the Central American Collective. She currently serves on various boards and committees, including the Latino Initiatives Advisory Committee for Holocaust Museum Houston, Cleveland Ripley Neighborhood Center Advisory Committee, and the Board of Directors for the Cámara de Comercio Centroamericana, helping develop local businesses and connecting international business opportunities between the United States and Central America. Over the years, she has won accolades for her leadership in the community, including being named one of Rumble Newspaper's Mujeres Destacadas, as well as one of Latino Leaders Magazine's Influential Latinos of Houston. So thank you so much for joining us tonight, Maria.
Maria, we don't hear you yet. Let's try again. Nope. Let's, what did you do last time? Did you disconnect from your phone and just come back to your computer? It was working before. No, we do not hear you yet. So if you could try to do what you did last time that got it to work, let's try that whole sequence. No worries. Activism is messy sometimes. Sometimes the Zoom audio doesn't work. It's, you know. Yes.
Let me try. Oh, is this working now?
Magic. Well done. All right, go ahead.
Thank you so much. So now my computer has decided to work, and I really appreciate it. My name is Maria Vilma Duran, and I'm the founder of the Central American Collective. I would really like to thank the Holocaust Museum Houston and the Latino Initiatives Advisory Committee for the invitation and the support throughout the years. And I really want to thank Together We Remember for hosting this space and giving the global community an opportunity to come together to share what we're doing and work as a collective in the prevention of mass atrocities. Today, we honor the victims and the survivors of genocide across the world. And it's very important for all of us to be here in this moment. George Santayana once said that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. And the Holocaust Museum Houston was built on the idea of preserving the stories and memories of unchecked prejudice of those who perished and those that survived, because of the importance to educate everyone about the dangers of prejudice and hatred in society. But what if our stories and our memories are part of a culture of silence? One that in recent history has experienced genocide, femicide, civil war, social injustice, and civil unrest that continues to pervade? What if we barely exist in textbooks and television? And that is the reason why Central American Collective exists. I would like to share with you my presentation. So I started Central American Collective to build Central American cultural power, so also empower younger generations through historical knowledge and to spotlight social issues affecting our community through the power of art, culture, and people. You know, one of the things is that as I researched and learned more about myself in order to share with everybody, I learned about the importance. It became very clear the importance of art and culture to educate about social justice. You know, I'm from El Salvador. That is something that I'm always very proud to say. Our country, my country, is the size of Rhode Island. You know, population of just over 6 million living within the borders. But then across the world, we have another 3 million people, Salvadorans, that are living. I'm not a scholar, a writer, or an educator, but I highly believe in the importance to educate our younger generations about what our families have endured, what we continue to endure through generational trauma, how we got here, but also where we can go. You know, all of this really started because one of my friends, who happens to be Colombian and comes from a culture where within her family, she has Afrodescendientes, as well as mestizos, and just a very diverse family. She asked me, are there any Black Salvadorans? And I immediately said no. A second later, I thought about it and I was like, hold on a second, I don't know. And that was a very impactful moment for me to just say something without knowing it. So, you know, Google helped me learn about Afro-Indigenous community. Actually, through Google, I became exposed to a lot of history that I was not aware of. I knew about the Civil War in El Salvador because, you know, I am the product of that. I came here when I was very, very young, escaping that, but I didn't know anything beyond the fact that it existed. So after doing a quick Google search, I started to learn about La Matanza of 1932 and how Afro-Indigenous communities were killed, you know, after a peasant uprising that became an ethnocide. You know, and that just opened my eyes to a lot of things that I had absolutely no idea. Then I came to learn about how, you know, El Triángulo Norte, the North Triangle of Central America, we're so tied together through everything that has happened in the last couple of years. A history that we share through Civil War, through you know, through mass atrocities that just happened in the last century. Something that my generation has been affected by, yet I don't learn about it at school. And so it became very, very important for me to be able to be part of spaces and where I can advocate in order to bring that voice and to ask for somebody to help raise awareness about all of these things. You know, knowing more about the Panzos massacre that happened in Guatemala, about the Mosquito massacre that happened in Nicaragua, about El Mozote, which is a massacre that happened in El Salvador, which is very relevant at this moment in time, as we have a trial happening where we're learning more about how different players were part of these massacres. And so it became very, very important to also bring awareness to all of the people that are trying to tell these stories. And that is where art, culture, and social justice and education are all tied together. So through the Central American Collective, and thanks to, you know, to entities like the Holocaust Museum Houston, we have been able to bring more awareness to these different stories. And so I want to share with all of you how we do have storytellers that are trying to tell our stories, that are trying to help educate our younger generations about what has been happening, in our countries, through their art. And so here are just a couple of examples of some of the storytellers that we're still continuing to try to work with them. We've made some connections, and we're working on a couple of projects, finalizing a couple of details in order to roll out those projects with them. Like we have here Garifuna Impero, which is a story about, it's a mockumentary about the struggle to preserve the endangered Afro-Amerindian culture by building a language school in Honduras. And that brings awareness to the struggle of the Garifuna communities in Honduras, as well as how now they're affected by a lot of land grabbing that is happening across not only Central America, it happens across the world, especially for our indigenous communities who, have maybe some of are in part of some of the best locations. And then because of development, you have a lot of companies that are just going in and doing this. Also, La Lucha Sigue, which is also from Honduras, and that is bringing awareness again to some of the dangers that are happening with different land defenders across Honduras. You have the Lenca people, as well as the Garifuna, who are fighting for, ensuring that our that water is free and safe to drink. And so, these are stories that we need to be able to tell. In El Salvador, we have the story of El Lugar Más Pequeño, or the tiniest place. And that's the story of Sinquera, a village that literally was wiped off the official map of El Salvador during our 12-year civil war. And so, and it talks about the ability to rise and rebuild and reinvent after tragedy. And this last film, the Ballad of the Little Soldier, focuses on a group of Miskito Indians who used children soldiers in the resistance during the Civil War. As Dr. Clara mentioned earlier, a lot of my friends and family who live in El Salvador, especially their younger kids, don't even know about what their parents lived or what their grandparents lived through. 60 years ago. And so it's so important for us to be able to use art and culture in order to tell our stories and bring it to the classrooms, and also bring it to these younger generations who haven't been exposed to this history. I did want to bring some awareness to an event that we did with the Holocaust Museum just last year. We had the Mujeres Filmmaker series, and it featured Anaís Taracena, who is a filmmaker from Guatemala. And we showcased her documentary Los Médicos de la Montaña, where it talks about how communities that are in the mountains, indigenous communities that are in the mountains, continue to use not only what they learned through their ancestors, but also other medical procedures during the Civil War, in order to continue to treat patients, in the present day. We're talking about communities who don't have access to medicine, and aren't able to just drive to a hospital, and so they rely on this knowledge. But she has been doing some amazing work, and just recently released El Silencio del Topo, which is The Silence of the Mole. And it is a documentary and the story of Elias Barahona, who's a respected Guatemalan journalist who disappeared during the Civil War and emerged as a mole within the Guatemalan government, and who was also infiltrating leaked information to the guerrilla movement, and helped, actually his testimony was key in unveiling a lot of the atrocities that happened during the Civil War. And so, I think one of the things that I really wanted to bring to the forefront is that storytelling is important, especially for our communities. And it makes me, it really touches me, because as somebody who didn't necessarily live through the Salvadoran Civil War, my grandma did. Yet it is hard for her to tell me her stories. It's hard for my mom to tell me what she lived before she came here. But I know that I need to know, and I know that younger generations need to know, so that it doesn't happen again. And so this is something that's very important to me. And I really appreciate the space. And I didn't know that I was going to be this emotional. But I really do want to emphasize the important role that we all have. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not a scholar. I'm not an educator. I'm not a writer. But I am a Salvadoran that wants to fully embrace my culture and doesn't want what happened during the Civil War to happen again. And also what's still continuing to happen through femicide and through just the civil unrest in my region. I don't want it to continue either. And so education is such an important tool. And so this quote just really is really important to me, because, like I said, there are still stories within my own family that I don't know if I'll ever know. But I do feel like it is really important for all of us to be able to share and to be able to educate. And so I ask that, and I know that's something that we're all doing, but just to continue to promote the importance of our storytellers, our authors, our filmmakers, our films, and highlight and support the work that they're doing to bring this education to schools and to the community. And it's something that we can all do and work together. So here are a couple of items that that through Central American Collective we've actually been we've worked on. So La Cachada, which is a theater troupe from El Salvador. It's women who tell their stories. Most of them have suffered domestic violence, and they were all they sold items in el mercado, yet they became actors of their own stories and were able to tell them. And not only has it been a healing process for them, but I think it's also been educational for a lot of us who have gone and seen not only the film, but also the theatrical piece. Teaching Central America, which is a project of teaching for change. And that is just bringing more awareness about Central America through education in the schools at all levels. So, I invite everybody to go and please check them out. And also authors such as Roberto Lovato, who just released this very important memoir where he also spoke about, the generational trauma within his family, but just kind of brought everything together. So I just really want to thank everybody for this opportunity, and continue to invite everybody to to tell our stories and to use storytelling as a tool for educating our youth.
Thank you so much, Maria. You really inspire us. And we were so grateful for the event that we were able to do with y'all last year. So thank you so much for being with us today. I did have a question for you. You've talked a lot about how important education is, which we really appreciate. So do you have recommendations for how teachers can amplify Central American voices and history in their classrooms?
So I think that teaching Central America is a great tool. And I've actually gone to their website and gathered a lot of their materials, because they have created lists of books that are separated by age group in order to to teach kids about their culture. And then also, I think a lot of times just being able to bring some of the stories, like, as with younger kids, as you're reading about like these folk tales, these European folk tales, it's like, why not bring in a folk tale from Central America, La Ciguanaba, or something, El Cipitillo, because there is a lot in just bringing some of those pieces. So I think for educators, for teachers, like, sometimes it's also just recognizing the diversity of the kids within your classroom, because I know that during my time in school, I was maybe one of a handful of Central Americans throughout. And so, just having teachers kind of recognize, like, hold on, do you want to, asking students, like, what do you want to share about your culture, or what interests you about your culture, or what can I help you research? A lot of times that's what we're looking for, and so I think those are some of the ways. Finding great resources like Teaching Central America that can provide materials, but then also just being able to have those questions and that rapport with your students, and asking them, hey, what do you want to learn?
Thank you, Maria. I really appreciate that. And that's really wonderful advice. So I hope that teachers watching will really take that to heart. So thank you again, Maria. Now I'd like to turn it over to the Director of Education at Holocaust Museum Houston, Wendy Warren, for concluding remarks.
Thank you, Amy. And thank you, Maria and Clara. This has really been quite important and inspirational. Holocaust Museum Houston is proud to be a part of the Together We Remember coalition. Our vision is of a society that transforms ignorance into respect for human life, that remembers the Holocaust and reaffirms an individual's responsibility for the collective actions of society. We continue to teach the lessons of the Holocaust and other genocides while pursuing justice for all. In Judaism, a Yortzeit candle is lit in the memory of a single person. Today, we light many candles to remember the victims of genocide and human conflict.
Gracias. El Museo del Holocausto de Houston se enorgullece de ser parte de la coalición Juntos Recordamos. Nuestra visión es de una sociedad que transforma la ignorancia en respecto a la vida humana, que recuerda el Holocausto y reafirma la responsabilidad de un individuo por las acciones colectivas de la sociedad. Seguimos enseñando las lecciones del Holocausto y otros genocidios al tiempo que defendemos la justicia para todos. En el judaísmo, la vela Yortzeit se enciende en la memoria de una sola persona. Hoy encendamos muchas velas para recordar a las víctimas del genocidio y los conflictos humanos.
Thank you. Thank you, David.